What's going on everybody, Cleopus Tech here, coming back at you with another video. In this video, we're going to be doing a quick comparison between the Boost Mobile Celero 5G Plus and the Samsung Galaxy A73 5G. Now as always, if you want to learn more about either phone individually, be sure to check out the description, where I am linking to several other videos about them, as well as some information about pricing, availability, and some of my favorite smartphone accessories. But with that being said, let's get into it. So with the Boost Mobile Celero 5G Plus, we're getting a really large 6.95-inch 120Hz IPS LCD display with a 1080p resolution, a PPI of 386, and a 20.5:9 aspect ratio. With the Samsung Galaxy A73 5G, we're getting a 6.7-inch 120Hz Super AMOLED Plus display. This phone also has a 1080p resolution, a PPI of 392, and a 20:9 aspect ratio. So in general, both phones have really good displays, but first of all, clearly here, the Celero 5G Plus at 6.95 inches versus 6.7 with the A73 5G is definitely noticeably larger. Maybe not by a ton, considering 6.7 inches is definitely not small. But at the same time, if you do prefer a larger display, then obviously, the Boost Mobile Celero 5G Plus will have an advantage. On the other hand, with the A73 5G, with a Super AMOLED Plus display versus an IPS LCD, the image quality is going to be quite a bit better. First of all, as you can probably see pretty clearly, the A73 is quite a bit brighter, and the viewing angles are also way better, so if you're outside in the sun or really in any kind of bright area, the A73 5G will be a lot easier to see. In addition to this, despite them both having really nice sharp images, the A73 has richer, more vibrant colors, so in general with this phone, things are going to look and feel a bit more premium, whereas on the other hand, things are going to be larger with the Celero 5G Plus. So at the end of the day, both phones do have good displays, it's really up to personal preference, but either way, if you are looking for a phone that's great for consuming content, you're really not going to go wrong with either one. Now for storage, both phones here have 128GB of internal storage with microSD card expansion, so no difference here, but keep in mind 128GB is going to be plenty of storage for most people, and with microSD card expansion, you can always offload stuff like photos and videos, so in general for pretty much anyone, storage is not going to be an issue with either phone here. For security features, both phones have fingerprint scanners. With the Celero 5G Plus, it's right here on the power key, and with the A73 5G, we got it right here in the display. Also keep in mind, the A73 5G does have Face Unlock too, so definitely nice to get both options. But unfortunately, the Celero 5G Plus does not have Face Unlock, only a fingerprint scanner. But as you can see here, the fingerprint scanner is real fast and responsive, so no issues at all. Definitely nice to have at least one other option besides a pin to unlock your phone. And then with the A73 5G, same kind of thing. Great fingerprint scanner here as well. The placement is honestly up to personal preference. I feel like in the grand scheme of things it doesn't make a huge difference, but as you can see, again it does work really well here too, and I feel like with an in-display fingerprint scanner it's just a bit more premium, so I personally prefer it, but you can't go wrong with having it on the power key either. Now for the camera setups, with the Boost Mobile Celero 5G Plus. Up front, we got a nice looking hole punch design for the selfie camera. This camera is 16 megapixels. Then on the back, we get a triple camera setup with a 50 megapixel main camera, a 5 megapixel ultra wide camera, and a 2 megapixel depth sensing camera. For video, this phone has a max recording quality of 1080p in both the rear and front cameras, so unfortunately no 4K here, but considering this is an entry-level carrier branded phone, I'm not too surprised. With the A73 5G, up front, we got pretty much the same design for the selfie camera. This camera is 32 megapixels. Then on the back, we got a quad camera setup with a 108 megapixel main camera, a 12 megapixel ultra wide camera, a 5 megapixel macro camera, and a 5 megapixel depth sensing camera. And then for video, this phone can record 4K videos in both the rear and front cameras, so definitely nice to see here. Now overall, on one hand, the Celero 5G Plus for what it is does have a pretty decent camera setup. I am glad we're at least getting an ultra wide camera, but with the A73 5G, I feel like this camera setup is better in pretty much every way, because not only are we getting an ultra wide camera here, but we're also getting a macro camera. The main camera is a bit nicer in general, and this phone can also record 4K videos. So overall, if you're taking more pictures and the camera is really a priority for you, I would definitely go with the A73 5G. Now to give you an idea of what they can do, first, here's some pictures taken with the Celero 5G Plus. And overall for what it is, I will say it's at least acceptable, but if you are taking a lot of pictures and again, the camera is a bit more of a priority for you, I feel like you're probably not going to want to choose this phone just because even though the photo quality is not terrible, it's still not really great. So for stuff like Instagram, for example, where you want things to be a bit more presentable, I do think you can do better. And then here's some pictures taken with the A73 5G. And overall, I do think the quality here is quite a bit better. So again, if the camera is more important to you, if you are really taking a lot of pictures and you want to make sure you have really good photo quality, then between the two, I would definitely go with the Samsung. Now for the RAM and processor, with the Boost Mobile Celero 5G Plus, we're getting 6GB of RAM with the Qualcomm Snapdragon 695 processor. With the A73 5G, we're getting 8GB of RAM with the Qualcomm Snapdragon 778G processor. Now in general, when it comes to overall performance, on one hand, the Boost Mobile Celero 5G Plus is definitely good for what it is, and for average daily use. I mean, keep in mind, the Snapdragon 695 is a really good processor. I believe the Samsung Galaxy A23 5G also uses it, as well as the OnePlus Nord N30 5G and several other pretty nice mid-range phones. So my point is, for the average user, for typical daily use, if you're doing stuff like browsing the web, using social media, watching YouTube videos, more simple things like that, the Celero 5G Plus will get the job done just fine. And for what it is a decently fast device. But between the two, the A73 5G is noticeably faster. So if you are going to be on your phone a bit more, doing more demanding activities, then between the two, I would definitely go with the Samsung. Now I ran a benchmark test on each phone here using Geekbench 6, and here are the results I got. So again, as you can see here, between the two, the A73 5G does have an advantage. So if the performance is more of a priority for you, definitely keep this in mind. But again, in my experience, the Celero 5G Plus is still pretty fast for what it is, and honestly, I haven't had any performance issues at all, no lagging or slowdowns or anything like that. So if you are really just looking for something for more basic activities, then this phone will definitely get the job done. For the batteries, both phones have 5000 mAh batteries, with the Boost Mobile Celero 5G Plus supporting 15W fast charging, as well as wireless charging, and the A73 5G supporting 25W fast charging. And keep in mind, the A73 5G does not have wireless charging. So overall, both phones have great batteries, and of course, if you want wireless charging, the Celero 5G Plus will have an advantage. But if you don't really care about that and maybe you want better fast charging, then in that case, the A73 5G might have a slight edge. But honestly, either way, again, both phones have great batteries. The battery life and longevity is really good here, so if that is important to you, you're not going to go wrong either way. For the software, the Celero 5G Plus does have Android 12, and considering it is a carrier branded phone, it's not impossible, but I'm not expecting it to get any kind of major updates, so if that is important to you, definitely keep this in mind. But the A73 5G does have Android 13, and in addition to this, with this phone, you can also expect to get Android 14, 15, and 16, so if the software is more important to you, the A73 5G will have an advantage. And when it comes to other features, like I said before, again, the Celero 5G Plus does have wireless charging, so definitely nice to see there. And in addition to this, both phones have NFC, so if you like to use tap and pay, you can use this feature with either phone. Another thing I do want to point out here is that unfortunately, with the A73 5G, this phone does not have a headphone jack, whereas luckily with the Boost Mobile Celero 5G Plus, we are getting one. So if you like to use wired headphones, then keep in mind, to use them with the A73 5G, you will need an adapter. But in conclusion, which of these phones is better? Now, in general, in pretty much every way where there's a difference, the Samsung Galaxy A73 5G is definitely the better device here. Despite the Boost Mobile Celero 5G Plus being quite a bit larger, the A73 5G has a much better quality image. It also has a better camera in pretty much every way, significantly faster performance, and much better software support too. That being said though, when it comes to the actual value you're getting for the money, I feel like for most people, the A73 5G is probably not going to make the most sense. The reason I say this is because with the A73 5G, in case you didn't know, this phone is not officially launched in the US, and despite being over a year old, the price is still, in my opinion, really not the greatest. I feel like in the US, for the price of this phone, you can get an S21 FE, which in my opinion is a lot better than this. Whereas on the other hand, with the Boost Mobile Celero 5G Plus, despite having a full price of around $289, you can find this phone for quite a bit less. I know Boost Mobile has deals on it all the time, and even though it's not quite as good as the A73 5G, I feel like it's close enough to the point where getting this phone for like $200 or less is honestly going to give you quite a bit more value than spending maybe $400 on the A73 5G. So overall, on one hand, if you really just don't care about the price and you really want to get the A73 5G, you won't be disappointed, and in general, you will get a better experience with this phone most likely than the Celero 5G Plus. But if you do really want to maximize the value you're getting for the money, for the price, the Boost Mobile Celero 5G Plus just has so much to offer that I feel like for most people, this phone will make a lot more sense. But this concludes my comparison between the Boost Mobile Celero 5G Plus and the Samsung Galaxy A73 5G. Again, if you want to learn more about either phone individually, definitely check out the description, where I am linking to several other videos about them, as well as some information about pricing, availability, and some of my favorite smartphone accessories. But that's it for this video. If you enjoyed it and found it useful, be sure to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to follow Kalipis Tech on Twitter and Instagram. And as always, I will see you in the next video.